Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Cats About Town, TVC 22. We are here today to talk to one of our municipal councillors, André Lalonde, who is now in the midterm of his first term as a municipal councillor. Way too often we think about our municipal councillors as politicians, and we wonder really what they're there for. Very few of us realize how difficult a job this is. And so we are going to take the opportunity to talk to some of these people, those who are there for the first time, those who have a little bit of previous experience, to find out just exactly what is involved. And in most cases, just how much we have to be grateful for their having taken the time and made the effort to do this public service. André, thank you very much for being here this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Speaking of public services, here we are on a Thursday evening when you should be home with your family. And we're sitting here instead next to the piano, which nobody's even playing for us, to talk about your service as a municipal councillor. Here you are 2 years in.
Yeah, it's been going very fast. Halfway done the first term already.
Yeah, it's been after the walking for hours and hours, knocking on doors, shaking hands, sitting there for hours and hours, going through reports and meetings. Do you regret any of it?
Absolutely not. It's been, I won't lie, it's been a rough ride for the first 6 to 8 months because the learning curve is just that big. Learning everything from processes to standards and rules and regulations, and learning the files, because a city of our size, you can only imagine with a $40 million annual budget, the devil's in the details, right? So, I mean, it's, especially when we started off, we had 2 or 3 big items to go through. We had the development charge study, we had our first budget, so just those two were just enormous in time consuming in learning, and you want to make the right decisions. I mean, you want to take the time to read the documentation and ask the good questions and figure out, you know, where we should be as a city. So no, but it's been an extremely fun. It's very demanding, however, but it's you get so much out of it. So I mean.
Well, there are a lot of interesting councillors in this mandate, people with
we have a good mix. So
a lot of good quirks and a lot of good knowledge.
We have a lot of good people at council with various expertise in various domains. I'm a University of Ottawa employee as well, a graduate there.
You are a University of Ottawa employee?
Yes.
What do you do there?
I'm a grants officer for research purposes. So we deal with, our office deals with grants and contracts.
Okay, so
you
you
have...
have...
300 million a year goes through our office. So it's a big enterprise. Yeah.
So digging deep is in your nature then?
Yeah, I mean, when we have a 150-page contract that you need to negotiate with Health Canada on a study, you want to make sure you know, dot your I's and cross your T's. So, and everything is about rules and regulations these days. So you want to make sure that the public monies are well spent and spent in a way that's accountable, right? So same goes with budget for city council. It's basically the same thing. So I was able to, you know, use my experience that I've had making budgets over there for researchers and helping them understand and what they can do, what they can't do, and stuff like that. So, and I mean, we have a whole bunch of, like I was mentioning, a whole bunch of people on council that, coupled with very competent staff, that I think the citizens of this city should be proud of the team that they have right now, because it's. We've been going full bore 150% since day one, and there's no signs of stopping.
No, and I think that you meet as a council once a month?
Oh, it's more than that. We meet the first Monday and the third Monday of every month. There's a council, the regular and the plenary sessions. Some of us are involved with the planning committee, which is another meeting a month. But myself, I'm involved with the Community Services Department with Mr. Boucher. So I'm their representative at council. So since with daycare, with the arenas, everything that's community services, CRT. So that keeps me busy as well, with working with alongside of Pierre and his team. So I mean, it's like
yeah, those are very important issues, and they're the kinds that most residents identify with. Roads are something that perhaps we suffer from or enjoy, but we don't really get that involved, most of us. But when it comes to arenas and programs, so you must be getting a lot of calls in addition to a lot of documents.
I do get calls and emails, mostly emails. People these days email because it's easier for them. They can, that was one of my, I wouldn't say a fear, but it was one of my concerns, if you will, that once you get elected, you're open for business for 24 hours, or getting calls and all that stuff. But people have been really great at just, emailing me their questions and not expecting an immediate answer, and making sure that I have time to look into and research and then answer their concerns and stuff like that. So it's been fun. It's been really fun. So I really enjoy it, and I don't regret at all signing up for this.
How about your family? How do they feel about it?
Well, my family's been very supportive. I mean, my sister and my two nephews my two nephews are 8 and a year and a half. So I mean, the older one keeps asking what the heck is a counselor and what does it do, and So I've been trying to teach him on those aspects. And mom's been really supportive, although she was really anxious at the beginning, because as a mother, you try to protect your children, even though I'm, technically not home anymore.
It makes no difference.
No, exactly. No. You're always your mother's child. So I mean, she was worried at first, but now she's seeing that the positive impact that we as a council can have, and discussing the issues around the family table and all that stuff, and people going to her because she's also well known in the community. So she gets feedback from different people and all that stuff. So she's actually proud now that I've been able to do that, and to her, she's always been a community-oriented person. So that's where I get it from.
Well, of course, everybody in this country is aware of the 3 levels of government, the federal, the provincial, and the municipal, and everybody knows that the municipal is probably the one where you can make the biggest changes, but it's also the one where your hands are most tied because you have the least flexibility with budgets. Yet it's a wonderful training ground.
Yeah, and when I decided to finally, make a try of it, being in politics, because this has been something that I've always been interested in politics.
Why is that?
I don't know. It's just a way to give back, I guess, to your community, to your neighbors, and it's always been something. In 2010, I was supposed to run. I was lined up. I was almost ready. I was saying, okay, I have to do this because otherwise I'm going to regret not trying it. And for some reason in 2010, I didn't feel like I was totally ready for it. So I backed out at the last second. And but in 2014, I said, you know what? No, enough, of waiting. I have to do this. And you mentioned the 3 levels of government and stuff. So I could have tried something else. I could have tried provincially or federally even, but I felt that the municipal level, even though, like you said, your hands are a bit more tied because you don't have the level of monies available to you budget-wise to do, obviously, we're limited in what we can budget annually, but I think seriously it's where you make the most impact to your neighbors, to your community. And I'm from a little village of Clarence Creek. I've always lived there all my life. And my family is there, my neighbors, I know them all, and it's always nice to be able to give back to a community that's given so much. So I think that's the number one reason to try to help people as well when they're stuck in a little bit of a bind or whatever, and trying to see if there's something you can do at the municipal level. I mean, and that's the hard part, because sometimes there's nothing you can do because it's really literally out of your hands. But just to listen and try to engage people in conversations.
Listen and explain to them as well.
Exactly.
Sometimes people feel that they're being taken advantage of or ignored, and
yeah,
then
exactly.
you can reassure them that,
No, exactly, and it's part of being. I've always frowned on the word politician, because I don't see myself as one. I see myself as more as a person who will listen and try to help. I mean, if that's a politician, whatever. But I mean, I've always said, if you ask me a question, I'm not going to give you the politician's answer. If you really want the answer, you might not like it, but it's going to be the answer that you should be hearing. And sometimes people are taken aback a bit by someone who does that, because there's the perspective that if you ask a politician a question, he'll give you the spin around or something.
Of course.
But
the answer that you want to hear.
I try, unless there's certain issues you just can't discuss publicly. I mean, when you're dealing with HR issues and stuff like that, there's rules and stuff like that. But when it's something as you're dealing with roads or whatever, it's infrastructure and all that stuff, or ice rental or daycare and all that stuff. I mean, to me, I'm as honest as I can be, and I was like this before I decided to run, and I didn't want to change just because I become, quote unquote, a public figure.
Well, no, because often you hear about how power changes people, and
yeah.
you do
trust
have.
Me, we don't have much power. I can
you
tell
don't.
you that.
You don't feel you have much power, and yet you have information.
No, we have information, yes, but sometimes I tell you, Kat, you're sitting at council and you feel powerless, because as a group, there's only so much you can do. There's only so much you control. Certain issues are hurting people, but sometimes there's just nothing you can do, and it's hard because you want to help, right? So it's.
I imagine that some of those issues include time for kids in arenas and programs in community centers.
Yeah, it's that. I mean, it can be anything from hydro rates to it's. I mean, that's the issue of the day these days. So I mean, or daycare charges, or bus routes, or arena bookings, or anything that's people who feel that. And I understand them, of course, because I'm a taxpayer as well. So I mean, you get the feeling that your concerns sometimes are not always up front and center. But with a population of 25,000 people, it's hard to be there for.
Yes, of course,
Yeah.
It's hard to be there to give everybody what they want.
Exactly.
I'm curious, has anyone ever come up to you and said, well, okay, we can't have this because there's not enough money in the budget, I understand that, but I'd be willing to pay more taxes in order to have it?
In a sense, yes, depending on, like right now there's an issue with the villages. Specifically for Clarence Creek and Bourget. There's a previous council before us had discussed the idea of getting sewers into the villages. Some type of sewers, not the same sewers as we have here in Rockland, but different kind. There's just many ways of doing it, apparently. So I'm not an engineer, so I mean, that was a big push had been done, previous council, to get that going, but they couldn't do it with their mandate because it takes years to get these kinds of things through. So I've had citizens saying, you know what, Andre, I wouldn't mind paying extra taxes if it meant we would have sewers in our village. But I mean, it's not everybody who would agree to that. So people will get a say at one point, you know, and they'll get the numbers for them to think over, because this would be a huge investment on the part of the city and part of the citizens. So so it's certain things like that people will say, you know what, if you pave my road, I'll pay more taxes. I don't care. Mm-hmm. But they'll still complain though once it's done.
Good point.
And then
Good
say,
point.
well, now I have to pay more taxes. Well,
mm-hmm.
So yeah. So it's no. But certain issues are more go more to heart than others, obviously. So if you speak to the single mother who has 3 kids, well, daycare for her is a big one, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But if you speak to the elderly couple who is alone in their house, then you know access to activities for seniors is more important than daycare, mm-hmm. right? So everybody has their own little world, a little place that and priorities, right? So but that comes with the territory.
So I understand that you have, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of issues that you have to deal with, not all of them at every council meeting, mm-hmm. but you do get a rather voluminous amount of information in preparation for every council meeting.
I read more now than I did doing my bachelor's degree at the university. I can tell you that right now. So the reports and all that stuff, so yes.
Is it true that we're talking about something in the order of 80 pages per meeting?
80? Try 800.
800?
With certain agendas, sometimes with their reports and all. If you know, it's anywhere between 500 and 800, depending. They're not all like that, of course, but we have some meetings that are really, really heavy. So it's a lot to go through.
It's a lot to go through.
And understand, because you have to understand what you're voting for.
Yeah.
And if you're voting for something, someone comes up to you and has read that report and is not in agreement with your decision, you have to be able to back it up. So, no, we spend like this Monday night we have a huge meeting coming up. We start at 6. Usually when we start at 6, we're there until at least 10:30, 11. So after a full day's work, you go to work for another 5-6 hours. Mm-hmm. And to be able to prepare for that meeting, you have to read over the weekend. So because mm-hmm. we get the documents usually on the Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, depending on when the directors can get their reports in. So no, it is a lot of documentation to go through, yes.
And are staff on call that weekend that you can send emails and ask questions to get clarification?
Well,
if you're expected to work weekends?
Well, no, they're not on call, although our CAO works 24/7.
She does, doesn't she? She's amazing.
Yeah, so I mean, you can always ask her questions on the weekend and she'll flip it back. So mm-hmm. She's great for that. But usually what I tend to do is I write an email to each director that has a report that I have a question on, and I'll give the question over the weekend. So first thing Monday morning when he or she comes in, he has the day to prepare for my question, basically, mm-hmm. because we meet at night. So that's a trend we usually take, because obviously we're not going to call these people at home on the weekend to question stuff. So that's the way we do it.
It sounds like a very thorough and respectful climate and arrangement that you've got right now with staff.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, we don't always, mesh all the time. I mean, sometimes we have ideas and we have points we want to take across, and they may not welcome those. Well, not welcome, but they might not be agreeing with what we want to do, right. And vice versa. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how a team environment is. You're not going to agree on everything, And the same goes for council. Sometimes we have situations where council is a bit divided on an issue, which is, again, fairly normal and standard in a democracy. That's the way the system is, and you can't, sometimes decisions go your way, sometimes they don't. And I've been on both sides, obviously. We're 2 years into a mandate, you just don't get your way all the time. So, but you have to abide and say, okay, you know what, it's a group decision. The group decided to go with or not with what you wanted, and you move on. Because
well, if everybody agreed, then there would be no need for councillors, would there be? Because then
or a mayor.
you'd have no value added.
No, exactly. So, I mean, we're there to question, we're there to initiate, investigate, and make sure that we ask the type of questions that the normal citizen reading that report would have. Because we're there to represent their interests, not ours.
That's a really important thing to remember.
Yes.
Because nobody
There's
can know
a reason
everything.
why we're there.
Yes.
It's because they respected us enough to represent them at a city council for 4 years. And not only is that a huge commitment on their part, on our part, it's a huge show of respect. And we should never, as a politician, forget that. Because when you start forgetting this and you get too comfortable into that type of a position, it's time for you to go.
Well, there are no feudal lords around in this community right now that I can see. And certainly when we look at, if anybody who reads the Vision or reads his constituency literature knows how much Francis Drouin, our federal member, drives that point through. He's always there to serve the people. And
exactly.
There's no other agenda. There's nothing else. And it's so important to remember.
No, exactly. And that's why you're there, is to... And Francis, I admire this guy quite a bit, because he's not, when he's against something his own government is pushing through, he'll say it. He's not going to shy away about it. And that, to me, it's the same thing at council. Whenever a councillor or the mayor presents something, or administration, I'm not going to say I'm for something when I'm really not. And it wouldn't be true to me, to myself. So I mean, we have to respect the fact that we are elected officials to represent the good of the people. So, and you can't forget that.
Well, you've certainly got the theory down, Pat, and it sounds like you spent 2 years getting the facts down too.
Well,
is there anything in the last 2 years that you've, how should I put it, that really didn't sit well with you? Something that you had to approve because there was some large, perhaps economic benefit or large organization behind it that we needed to give a chance to?
No, not in that
I'm not talking about lining pockets because we're not there.
No, of course you're not. That's not at all of that. It's there's no, I don't recall like a certain situation exactly like that, but there's situations and votes that have gone through that I wasn't entirely 100% satisfied that they were not in the best interest, but we could have done better.
Okay.
If you want it that way, like I said earlier, anytime you touch direct services to the population, sometimes you just can't win, because you're going to offend a certain group and make another group very happy. And so
the best you can do is make sure everybody understands the rationale.
Understands the logic, understands the reasoning.
Yeah.
And to me, the city itself, we're a young city, like generational wise. We have very young, lots of young families. We've Like this year, we've installed 2 additional splash pads, one right next door in Clarence Creek, another one in Bourget. So we're focusing more on the young families to attract more young families. So we have to gear our services towards those families. So I mean, daycare, making sure people can get into town to work. Obviously, most of the jobs are in Ottawa and stuff like that. So the CRT is a valuable, essential service to me in my mindset. But those are very expensive ticket items. So for the citizen who doesn't have a young family, who benefits from arenas and community centers and Optimist Hall and the CIH Arena and the YMCA and the public library and daycare or any of those types of services, it's hard for them to understand that it's in the best interest of the city to invest in these facilities and so for them, they live in a quiet little rural area where there's no asphalt, there's no surface treatment, it's just crushed stone, and they hate it because they don't feel like they've been serviced to the level that they thought they were going to be serviced. So
well, it's, as you say, it's the information that's necessary. I've lived for the last 13 years on a dirt road with no services other than garbage pickup. And
snow removal.
Roland, yeah. I could complain all the time, but I understand the limitations and the different priorities, and I would personally much rather have activities for kids than have a better road, because they are our future, and someday they'll grow up to be counselors.
And administrators, and we've seen a lot of the staff that are there now are local people who started off, they went as citizens here, they went to school, they went to university, college, get a degree, come back, work for their city, and are going up through the ranks. Yeah, so I mean, that's how you build a community.
Well, André, this is 2 years into your mandate.
Yes.
We're going to be coming up to the elections in 2 years, and hopefully nothing happens in those 2 years to discourage you from this wonderful commitment that you've made. We'll have another interview, hopefully, right, staff? And we'll see where things stand then. And
exactly.
The stakes will be different, but I have a feeling that your approach and your attitude will be exactly the same.
Yeah.
So thank you.
It has to be. I mean, and thank you so much for taking the time to have this chat. It's been fun.
Absolutely. And for all of you watching and listening, I hope that you've gotten to know André a little bit better and will be following some of the municipal activities a little more closely in the next 2 years in order to remain more informed and make a more informed decision when the elections come up. And with that, we are now going to end this interview, and please stay tuned for the next one. We have another mystery guest coming up in a few moments. Here we are back again with our mystery guest that I promised you at the end of our last interview with André Lalonde. We have Mario Zanth with us now. Mario will be speaking a little bit in French, a little bit in English, for those of you who are interested in taking a little bit of a French lesson. He has a lot of French constituents and wants to make sure that they get a chance to find out this other side of him, the personal side, which is what these interviews are all about. We have our counselors who dedicate a tremendous amount of time and effort and make a lot of sacrifices through their families. And we really want to get to know them better and find out where they're coming from when they're making all of these decisions about how we spend our tax dollars. So here we are on a Thursday evening. Mario's had a chance to go home from his day job, and he's back here again. Talk about dedication. Thank you so much for coming out and making this effort.
Thank you for having me.
So Mario, here we are 2 years into your mandate, and you've had one hell of a learning curve.
Yeah, I can actually
Any regrets?
No, not at all. Time flies, though. I was just talking to Carl yesterday about that, and he goes, I can't believe that it's already been 2 years. But I guess when you truly love what you do, time
Yeah.
flies, and I think it would go a lot slower if we didn't all get along the way we do. So I think it's it's a pleasure to actually be there, and we love the job that we do. So
You have found a way to get along together. You have found a way to work on information and facts.
yeah,
And respect.
I mean, there was such it was a, I'm not going to comment on the previous council because I wasn't in it, but from what I saw, it definitely wasn't harmonious. I'll just put it that way. And, I think one of the very first calls I made was to Zanth after I found out she was elected, and I told her right off the bat, I said, first of all, congratulations, the people have spoken. And I'm not interested in the 4 last years. I'm interested in the 4 next ones. So hoping that we can work together and find some common ground on some things. And I think that helped me also make sure that the stage was set to bury whatever they had done and let's start new, because everybody voted for something new, and it was time to do that. So
It definitely was a huge change.
yeah, no, it definitely was. It is complicated though. I mean, people expected to put 9 strangers in a room and say, okay, congratulations, now get along. It doesn't work. It's not that easy. You know what I mean? There are age differences, there are educational differences, there's a lot of differences. There's experience on council when most of us don't. So it was, and still sometimes is, difficult to get a common ground without thinking that something else is, or that there's a hidden agenda, but there really isn't. At the end of the day, we can look at each other in the eye and shake hands and say, that was my point of view, and if you can respect that, I'll respect yours.
That's wonderful. Now, you all come at it from different experiences, different backgrounds. What was your background? What were your reasons for running for council?
I have always, first of all, I have an incredible passion for public service, which is why I work for the Department of Justice for victims of crime, and so
Is that right?
that allows me to have that connection at work with actual citizens. Because when you work for the public service, it's really, really difficult to remember what your purpose is. Because there's so many,
Been there?
200,000 people, and at some point, there's a lot of people that go, I get up, I go to work, I make copies for my boss who's going to go to a meeting to take a decision on perhaps making a change, and I mean, it never ends. And for me, I have that actual connection. I have a citizen that calls me every day, and we discuss about the crime that happened in their family, or how I can help them get to a parole hearing and that sort of thing. And so I've always loved public service. I've always liked politics as well. Now, not in the sense that everyone may think, but I wanted to get involved in my community. And after I had seen, the direction that things were heading in, and I thought, you know what, I could really lend a helping hand on this one. So that's what made me want to get into it.
Well, it kind of gives you a right to criticize when you're willing to step in there and make a change. If you're not willing to put out, then...
Yeah, and you know what, I was told that by my grandfather a very, very long time ago, that said, if you're not going to vote or participate, then just be quiet and stay at home, if that's what your choice is. But if you're going to complain, then have something to do about it. So that's what I decided.
And that's what you did, and you have some experience. Now, you also have 2 reasonably young children. Have you found that the last 2 years has changed their attitude about politics, about municipal affairs?
My son's 10, so he's not quite into that. He's more into sports, any kind of sports. That's his passion. My daughter is really up on the American election. It just... yeah, so it just so happens that it's good timing. She's turning 13 on Saturday, so she's definitely much more aware. However, Canadian politics, probably not so much. I mean,
Hard to get excited about them.
No, it's true, because I mean, we don't have the fanfare that the Americans like to have on it. Plus, ours lasts 40 or 50 some odd days as opposed to like a year and a half. So that makes a difference. But they are aware. I mean, when they see me put on, my suit jacket or my suit or something, they just go, "Oh, you have a meeting." So okay, well.
So they're okay with it.
Yeah, and it's I mean,
But you're still making sacrifices. You're still taking away from family time. You have an enormous amount of material to read through. And
Yes, the material is getting easier as the years go on because we
Okay.
get to know the files a lot more. And so now I can go through the agenda and have a look and go, okay, I'll skim through. If there are any changes since the last time I saw this, then no. You know, okay, we're good to go. It's anything new that comes up that we really have to dig into, try to get a little bit more information or learn about the actual project, because it's not, you know, a director will come up and will sit at his spot and will be an expert in finance or an expert in infrastructure or all that kind of stuff. We come in, never had seen this in our entire lives, right? We get elected, we sit at this chair. Now we have to become experts at infrastructure, at planning, at transit, at libraries, at public works. So, I mean, we're really, I mean, it was a huge immersion process to start really understanding all the terminologies of all these different sectors, when really anybody else sitting at that table would just go, well, okay, that's fine. I'll let him talk about infrastructure, but that's not my thing. But we all have to know about it, right?
you all have to be involved. And
all have to
that's
be
what the whole principle of the council is.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
every one of you has to vote on every single decision.
And sometimes that is not an easy thing. Because
No.
no matter what happens, you know, we're all good friends. Well, we're all friends. Some of us are better friends than others, but we all respect each other a great deal. And I know when I read something, I can already tell if this is going to pass or it's not, and I already tell who's going to vote for it and who won't. Because I've gotten to know the way people think, and they've gotten to know the way I think on certain things.
So that's for the decisions that you make in council. What about the other part of your work as a councillor, representing the members of your ward, which I understand are mostly francophones? Do they take up a lot of your time as well?
It depends. It goes in spurts.
Okay.
The other day I had 4 phone calls in one day, and then the previous week I had none. So it depends.
Okay.
And they'll vary from, what I love about it actually, and I cut myself off even sometimes, but what I love about it is that really we're the link between the citizens and the city, because the citizens most of the times won't know who to call. They get an answering machine that says, if you know the extension you wish to dial or the name of the person. They don't know who's in infrastructure. They have no clue who's in planning. Is there a problem with planning or in infrastructure? They don't know. And so twofold on this is it's great experience for them because they get to learn exactly how this works, and they get to know me a little bit better. And it's great for me because I get to ask the question they ask, and I get to know the answer, and now I learn from it. Because again, it's always going to be a learning curve, right? Where I'm never going to get to a point where I'm going to know everything about an infrastructure. Otherwise, I'd be an engineer, and I don't want to be an engineer. So
It's not for everyone.
no, and so I love that portion of it. I love the fact that my phone rings and I'm like, okay, who are we helping today? What's going on? And I
Wonderful.
really enjoy it.
You seem very positive and upbeat, and it's remarkable to me that after 2 years you can still be that way. But it's very encouraging too. I'm wondering whether this is your personality, or this is really that it's not such a frightening experience to be a municipal councillor in Clairds Rockland.
I'm not a negative person by nature. What I did say to, I think it was Helen Collier, who's the Director General, the CEO, and I said, you know, the hardest part of the job is having to be so politically correct to so many people all the time. It's difficult because I'm the kind of person that likes to just blah.
Yeah,
I just want to say it.
I've seen it. Yes.
And you've also seen other people do it as well. But, and I really try, because again, it's a self-learning. I want to learn how to be better at communicating, better at interpersonal skills. And so I really do try to sit there and say, all right, how could I say what I really want to say, which is, I mean, it's just yelling in my head, and I have to translate this in something that is going to be respectful and, you know, factual and down to earth, and so to get the best positive results for the question that I'm asking. So, you know, I don't think I'm the only one that does that. I don't think it doesn't take that much effort, but it is it is sometimes difficult to, because I just get very fed up sometimes, and I want to hold someone accountable. But I did promise during the election, I told everyone, I said, you know, when we're, one thing that I will promise you, and I never made any promises during the campaign except for this one, if I have a problem with another councillor or the mayor or anybody, it won't be a circus in front of everyone. I'll take it in the back room and we'll discuss it. So it's happened a couple times where I've had to go, okay, maybe I didn't understand what you said, so let's just make sure that we're both on the same page, or not, but respect each other. So
You raise a very interesting point, and that's the issue of communication. You mentioned the elections, or maybe I mentioned the elections in the States. It's hard not to mention them or think about them every single day these days. But communication is really such an important aspect of our whole society. And in municipal affairs, we're dealing with issues, but essentially what we're doing is communicating concerns, communicating information. In provincial, federal, yes, that's supposed to happen, but it's a little more difficult because it's more remote. So you have quite the challenge ahead of you if you're going to do that right. Because you're not a lord, you're not a feudal lord, you're a servant.
No, it's true. But like I said, I think it helps when you have a great team that's open to that as well.
Yeah.
Because communicating is only half the battle. You have to have someone who's willing to communicate back and understand where you're coming from. I don't expect everyone to get to see it my way, because I'm still, like I said, I'm still learning. I don't have any issues with backing down, and I have on a number of times said, you know, I never thought of it that way, and I'll revise my vote because that's a good point. And so, but because sometimes you want to do everything you can for your citizens within reason, and you want to make sure that you come across, or not come across, but you have to make sure that you have a solution to a problem that is not about that individual. It's about the greater good of the city, long term, right? So we have many cases where they go, that doesn't suit me. I said, but that's not our job. My job is not to change an entire law so it could be good for you. You brought a good point, but does it stand the test that this could be something for everyone, and should we change that or not? But it's never going to be based around one or two citizens. It has to be for the greater good. So.
And that is one of the challenges in decision making, isn't it? That no issue is too small to be considered, and everything has ramifications.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of experience to figure that out.
Yeah, but luckily, we have a great administration team, and so they're the experts in in that field. And we, they give us reports, they give us recommendations. Sometimes we follow their recommendations, sometimes we don't.
So do you have any pet issues?
No, I wouldn't say I have any. You mean
that you really care strongly about more than others?
City-wise.
Yeah.
I've often said this, a lot of people will say that business people make great politicians. If I'm looking at the U.S., people are saying, that Donald Trump is, he's a businessman. He must know how to run a country or a city. And I strongly disagree with that, because, and no offense to business people that are watching this, but they are great at turning profits. That's what a business is. Cities, municipalities, countries are not meant to turn profits. They're meant to have libraries, arenas, transits, all these kinds of things, all these services. If the services turn profits, they'd be called businesses, but they're not. They're called services, and therefore you supply a service. You're going to supply it at a subsidized rate or something at some point. But it's important to have that. If you no longer have these things, any place for parks and tennis courts and splash pads and all that kind of stuff, you no longer have a community. That's what builds a community. That's the essence of a community, is to have places where people can gather and be together. Otherwise, you just have a bunch of houses with people staying in their houses, occasionally saying hello as they cut their grass, and that's it. So I'm passionate on those issues, on making sure that there are places for kids to have fun and grow up. As a matter of fact, I don't think we have enough. I think if we could have anyone out there who's watching this who can bring in a bowling alley or an arcade or a theater. Like, we have places that we need to be, because to be really honest with you, I think soon, if I'm not mistaken, at the last census that was taken, I could be wrong, but I remember hearing that Clarence Rockland had one of the populations, the oldest populations and the youngest populations. Because the oldest populations from when it was first established, well, not first established, but you know what I mean, and then it boomed, and a whole bunch of families moved in with younger kids. And sooner or later, actually I'll say sooner, these children are going to start roaming the streets with nothing to do. Literally, they'll have nothing to do. And it's important to have, this, a good infrastructure in place for people to have fun, arcades and
And those are
bowling
also the places where they develop certain skills, they develop...
Well, because right now it's all this. This is their skill. They're on
is.
their devices,
It is,
and that's the way
sadly.
that's the way it is. But
And parents don't like it. They complain about that too.
yeah, but we're kind of powerless to do much about it. But
Well,
that's a different.
That's business, right?
Yeah,
That was business that brought that in, nothing else.
That's a different subject. But yeah, so to answer your question, I mean, we need to keep things that make a community vibrant and grow.
So now that, I think are we going into the budget exercise?
We are.
So all of these things are going to be addressed and balanced and
Well, we're
tough decisions ahead.
We're strapped. Well, yeah, because I mean, all municipalities are strapped for cash, right?
They are.
And if I'm going to go out on a limb here, and it's probably not going to be a very popular thing to say, but it's a fact. And the more that people vote for, I'll call it candy, or promises, at the federal level, at the provincial level, regardless of the party stripe, everybody does it. They all offer different things. You will pay it 10 times at the municipal level. There is no money. If there were, the federal debt wouldn't be $600 billion, and the provincial debt wouldn't be $500 billion, and the city wouldn't have a debt. There is no money. And so the current system, I believe, I'm not an economist, but the current system of these grants and tax cuts and all these things that are happening and tax credits, I mean, it can't go on long term. Something's going to give. And I say that, I think last year, I think everyone's noticed their water bills have gone up a lot if you live within the confines of having city water. And that was a result of a grant being cut from the province. The province has no money. The province only can spend what it takes in and what it's not downloaded from the federal government. So anytime the federal government says, vote for me and you'll get X amount of dollars, or tax credits, or all that kind of stuff, it will get the money from somewhere, and it'll cut it to the province. And the province will say, I don't have this burden, I can't handle it, and so I'm going to pass it down to the municipality.
And the burden is on us, but not the money.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in the 1990s, just real quick, in the 1990s, we didn't pay for the OPP. The province paid for the OPP. But something happened where they can no longer handle the weight, the financial weight, and now we pay for the OPP. So we pay I'll throw out numbers, it's over $3 million a year that we pay for OPP. Now, yes, it's an essential service. It'd be great if the province could handle that. Do you know how many roads and infrastructure projects we could do with $3 million a year? For a small city like ours, it'd be huge. But we can't anymore. And so the OPP was downloaded to the municipality, and it's not going to be the last thing that'll be downloaded. I don't know what else is coming, but every time that this happens, more comes down to the municipality.
So that means that there's a lot of pressure on every municipality to bring in business or residents.
Business.
Some businesses can be good money-wise, but not good community-wise.
Exactly, right? So then you have to wait, because a lot of people, look what's happening, you just in Prescott Russell with the cement plant and the asphalt plant. You know, we want jobs, but we also want to protect the environment. We want to eat, but it's okay to sell farmland. We want to drive our cars, but we don't want the oil to be piped in or trucked in. So
we want trees, but it's okay to cut them down to make room for more homes.
Absolutely. I have an issue with that as well. I have a lot of issues, but but that's why I'm so passionate. That's why I wanted to do this job, is I wanted to sit there and have a say and say to developers who come in, who chop down an entire forest to build something that they feel is nice and lovely, but once it's built and they made their money, no offense to them, but they leave, and we're stuck with that. Now, we're not just stuck with the look and feel of a place and the fact that there's no more forest. And everybody on the side note on that complains that raccoons are in their backyards. Well, if we keep cutting their forests, we're going to have a lot more raccoons and things in our backyards. I'm just, there's, there's always...
The things you don't think about.
No, but, it's maybe not a huge thing. Everyone loves to
It
breathe.
is a huge thing.
But no one loves the trees, I guess. I don't know.
Because raccoons and skunks go hand in hand.
Absolutely. Soon no one will be able to have a nice romantic dinner on their back porch because they're going to go, okay, time to go in. And so it's important to realize too that when these huge developments come in, it's short-term gain for long-term pain on a municipality. Because yes, we take in the development charges. Yes, we take in the taxes that are going in. But the long-term effects on a municipality of fixing those roads, fixing the sewers, paying the hydro for the streets, plowing the streets in the wintertime, that is huge on a municipality.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to diversify these things and to say, you know what, maybe we should build more condos. Air is free. So I'm not talking about skyscrapers. I'm talking about more condos that you have a concentration of tax money in one area. And because most condos are private, the municipality has zero costs associated with garbage pickup or snow removal or any of that. So it's call it straight cash, but you know what I mean by that. So it's important to have that distinction because when these big developers come in and go, I bought this massive piece of land I'm going to develop, it's important to raise those and say, okay, well, if you want to develop, but I expect more condos and that sort of thing, because we shouldn't have to pay for this long term.
You've just raised the tip of the iceberg, I think. A number of issues, but it's still only the tip of the iceberg.
But no one likes to talk about it.
Nobody likes to talk about it, and yet everybody likes to complain about it.
Yeah, no, it's true.
But without having all of the facts at their fingertips. But
Yeah.
you spend muchly hours going through these issues week after week, day after day, and taking away time from your family, taking away time from your sleep in order to try and get all of these facts straight. You've had 2 years now, you've got another 2 years. Something in you says you've got to go on for another 4 years because there's no way you can make a change in 4
I will
alone?
I will definitely go for another term.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I want to continue. That's like you said, you can't get much done in 4 years. First of all, the first 4 years is still going to be learning. At the end of 4, I'm still going to be trying to figure out exactly how this all pieces together. I'll have a better idea of it. But like I said, you never stop learning. And so, 4 years, I definitely will put my hat in the ring. Now, there have been changes with elections in Ontario. It will not be held the same way that they usually are. I think Bill 181, I think, was passed. I was very upset at that bill, by the way. I let Grant Crack know.
Oh,
I was like, you better not vote for that. And of course he did, but that's...
Yeah.
But it basically, it changes the... it used to be January 1st, you used to be able to give your nomination. Now it's May 1st. So that's not that big of a deal. No more corporate or union donations are allowed. Now, for municipal politics, not a lot of individuals donate money for municipal politics. And since no businesses will be allowed to donate funds, it did upset me a little bit because I actually, when I spoke to Grant Crack about it, I said, it's easy for a party. You can fundraise all year round. We're not allowed.
So you're supposed to pay out everything out of your own pocket?
Yeah, that's the new rules. That or individual donations from citizens. Yeah, and if you lose that money. You can't claim that on your income tax or anything to get any of that back. So
Okay.
the only thing you get back is if you win, you get your deposit back. That's
So
it.
if you happen to be if there is such a thing as a low-income ward or a sparse ward, then you're out of luck.
Yeah, well, because you can't compete with
Rural
people who.
ward, for instance, yeah.
So I don't necessarily think that's fair, but I mean that's provincial politics. So I don't want to really get into that, but it is going to be a very different election, as well as ranked ballots will be allowed. So the first past the post system will no longer be what will be done in Ontario. I believe the municipalities will have a choice to go with first past the post or ranked.
Okay.
And we'll see what, that conversation will come up. We're supposed to have a conversation, I think it's, probably about this summer, about what we want to do as far as the next election, if it's going to be electronic, if it's going to be, ballots, if it's going to be first past the post or not. So.
Okay, well.
Sorry, I'm bombarding you with stuff. I'm sorry. You've
No,
opened a can of worms.
Well,
Kat,
yes, but people should be aware of that. People should understand that it's not all about talking about roads and community centres. As important as those things are, there are a lot of considerations that anyone who runs for municipal council has to take into account. And here you are, and just as André, you've done it for 2 years, you're willing to do it. Not only are you willing to do it for another 2, but you're willing to try it again out of a sense of commitment and caring. And I don't get the sense from either one of you that it's because you want your name on a park anywhere or on a street. No. But it's a personal cost, financially, time-wise, health-wise, I'm sure too. And we have to honor you for the effort that you're making. Not too many people would be willing to do it. How are there, in 2 years, if not before, we're going to be sitting down and we're going to be talking about this again. But I'm hoping that during that time, people will think about what it is that they can contribute, even if they're not municipal councillors, to help those of you who go that extra mile and put your name on the ballot.
Yeah, I did have a lot of offers when I was first running. The problem was that because it was my first campaign and I was doing it by myself, I won't say I'm controlling, but I wanted, it was very important for people. My last name doesn't scream that I'm French, even though French was my first language. I learned how to speak English when I was 10.
Zanth, c'est quoi ça?
C'est suisse-allemand.
Suisse-allemand, okay.
I mean, we're going back generations,
Okay.
but it was important for me to meet every single person that I could pour leur parler en français, pour m'expliquer en français, pour qu'ils savent que je suis francophone et que je suis là pour les représenter dans n'importe quelle, des deux langues.
All right. Yeah.
So
very important, one of the beautiful parts of our community.
But I did control that a little. I said, you know what? I said, thank you. I said, this is my first time around. I want to meet every single person.
Okay.
And so I did that. And I still, you know what? I still go to Bellerive twice a year. I stand in line as they're standing in line waiting for their lunch. I shake their hands. I say, how are you? And I spend time with them. It's important to not go out, meet people, and then say, I'll see you in 4 years. That's not what being a community leader is. It's always being there. It's always answering the call. It's always going to, library functions and these sorts of things, because it's important. It's not
that's where you learn about what's going on and what people care about.
Yeah, but it's important for them to see that, that we're out in the community and we're not just going out to meetings and that's all that we do.
Yeah.
We're, I'm a dad. I used, my children use the library. They use the arena. I use the transit. I'm very familiar with, the services that the city offers. So I think it's really important for all of us to be very present. And we've done an amazing job at all of us trying to make sure, we all call each other and going, are you going to that? Or are you going to this? Or, okay, well, if no one's going, then I'll go. Or, just to have some representation from somebody. It's clear. I'd love to make it to be everywhere, but sometimes I obviously can't. So.
Well, there's no mistaking your sense of responsibility and commitment, and I think that's important for people to see.